The rain was soft that morning, more like a whisper than a storm. Its rhythm brushed against the hospital window, tracing slender silver threads down the glass. Inside, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and chamomile tea, the same tea James had brought for Deep earlier that day. Wrapped in a thin blanket, Deep sat by the window, her gaze drifting between the blur of raindrops and the dim gray sky. Weeks had passed since she was admitted. Weeks since her body, exhausted by both pain and pride, had finally surrendered. James had rarely left her side, every sleepless night, every trembling breath, but that morning, company matters had called him away. Alone now, Deep reached for the small vase on the sill. The lilies inside were beginning to wilt. She brushed a petal with her fingertip, whispering to no one, "Even flowers get tired." The door opened softly behind her. Deep turned, expecting James. Instead, she found herself staring into the kind eyes and rain-damp hair of Mrs. Quynh, James's mother. "Good morning, Deep," the older woman said gently, closing the door behind her. "Did I disturb you?" Deep quickly adjusted her blanket, startled. "Oh, no ma'am. Please come in." "You shouldn't have traveled in this weather, Mrs. Quynh smiled faintly. 200 kilometers is nothing when your child's heart is here." She took a slow step forward, her tone tender but firm. "When I heard you weren't well, I wanted to see for myself." Deep's fingers trembled as she helped her guest to a chair. "I'm much better now." "You really didn't have to come all this way. Let me be the judge of that, Mrs. Quynh replied softly. For a while, the room was quiet, only the patter of rain and the ticking of the clock filled the air. The older woman's gaze swept across the medical charts on the table, the untouched meal tray, and then back to Deep's thin frame. "You've lost weight," she observed, her voice lined with concern. "James tells me you've been skipping meals again." Deep lowered her eyes. "I just don't feel hungry sometimes, Mrs. Quynh sighed. "You remind me of someone I once knew, my younger self." Deep looked up, surprised. "There was a time," the woman continued, "when I thought being strong meant carrying everything alone. But I learned something. It takes even greater courage to let someone love you." The words hovered between them like a fragile truth. "I don't know if I deserve that kind of love," Deep murmured. "James deserves someone better, someone not burdened by a broken past." Mrs. Quynh leaned closer. Her eyes softened, her voice unwavering. "My son doesn't need perfection, Deep. He needs honesty, warmth, and a heart that loves him truly. You've given him that." Tears burned behind Deep's eyes. You're too kind, ma'am. I've made so many mistakes. Mrs. Hyen reached across the small distance between them and clasped Deep's trembling hand in both of hers. Her palm was warm, her grip steady, carrying decades of understanding, of forgiveness earned and given. Listen to me, child, she said quietly. You deserve to be happy. Something inside Deep broke at those words. Her lips trembled, and tears came, slowly at first, then freely, silently. Mrs. Hyen's eyes glistened too. There they sat. Two women, one who had known loss, another who had known guilt. In the quiet room filled with the scent of lilies and rain, they found each other, not as mother and daughter, not as rivals for affection, but as two souls bound by shared pain and grace. For the first time, Deep felt seen, not as someone broken, but as someone worthy of love. And for the first time, James's mother wept not from worry for her son, but from gratitude. He had found someone whose heart could heal his own. A bridge between worlds. By the time James returned, the rain had stopped. The air was cool, carrying the scent of wet earth. As he opened the door, he froze. His mother and Deep sat side by side, hands still entwined. The moment felt sacred, suspended in light. Tears shimmered faintly on both faces, but the air wasn't heavy. It was tender, full of unspoken peace. Mrs. Hyen looked up, sensing his presence. You're back, she said softly, smiling through her tears. I hope you don't mind, son. I wanted to speak with her alone. James set down the paper bag in his hands. I don't mind, Mom. I just didn't expect. His voice faltered. You came all this way. I had to, she said, turning toward Deep with affection. Some things a mother must see with her own eyes. Deep quickly wiped her cheeks. I'm sorry, James. I didn't mean to make her worry. Before he could reply, Mrs. Hyen squeezed Deep's hand again. You didn't make me worry, dear. You made me proud. Deep looked at her, stunned. I've watched my son chase success, face failure, and walk through storms, Mrs. Hyen continued, but I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. That's how I know, you've given him something I never could. James's throat tightened. What's that? Peace, she said simply. For a moment, none of them spoke. Emotion filled the space between them, pure and wordless. James finally stepped forward, his eyes damp. Thank you, Mom. Don't thank me, she replied softly. Just promise me you'll take care of her. Both of you deserve happiness. Life's been hard enough. Deep's lips quivered. I don't know how to repay your kindness. Mrs. Hyen smiled faintly. By smiling again. That's all the repayment I need. James placed a gentle hand on Deep's shoulder. Then she'll have to smile a lot, he said quietly, because I don't plan on letting her cry anymore. The three of them laughed through their tears, and for the first time, the silence in that room wasn't lonely. It was full of love, of belonging. A mother's blessing. As Mrs. Hyen prepared to leave, she brushed away her tears and turned to Deep once more. Remember, child, she said in a voice as soft as silk, you deserve to be happy. Don't ever forget that. Her footsteps echoed gently down the corridor. When the door closed behind her, the room grew quiet again. The setting sun painted the walls amber. Deep sat still, her fingers tracing the blanket where her mother-in-law's warmth lingered. Acceptance, so long denied, now burned in her chest like a fragile flame. James sat beside her, his gaze soft. She really likes you, he said. Deep blinked. You think so? I know so, he replied. She cried, didn't she? My mother doesn't cry easily. When she told you that you deserve to be happy, she meant it. Tears welled up in Deep's eyes again. I don't know if I do, she whispered. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a burden, to you, to everyone. James shook his head, firm but gentle. You're not a burden. You're the reason I learned what love really means. He brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. Before you, I only knew how to work, how to win. But I didn't know how to stay when things got hard. You taught me that. Her tears came again, but these were softer, lighter. You shouldn't have to stay here, James. You have a company to run, a life to live. He smiled. My life is right here, Deep. Where you are. She let out a small, broken laugh. You always say things that make me cry. Then maybe, he teased gently, I should try harder to make you laugh. They both laughed quietly, the sound tender as rain on glass. Homecoming. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window, soft and golden. When Deep was finally discharged, the air outside carried the scent of blooming jasmine. She breathed it in deeply, the first true breath of freedom in weeks. James held her hand as they walked to the car. Each step was a quiet triumph, a step away from pain, toward something like peace. At the hospital gate stood Mrs. Hyen, waiting. Her eyes shimmered when she saw them. You look much better now, my dear, she said, opening her arms. Deep hesitated for only a moment before stepping into her embrace. It felt like home. Thank you for everything, Deep whispered. Mrs. Hyen's voice trembled as she replied, "You don't need to thank me, child. You've suffered enough. Now it's time to live, for yourself, and for those who love you." James stood quietly beside them, watching the two most important women in his life, united not by blood, but by understanding. Mrs. Hyen turned to him, smiling through her tears. "Take care of her, James. Don't let her carry the world alone anymore." "I won't, Mom," he promised. "I'll make sure she never feels alone again." The older woman placed Deep's hand in his. "You deserve to be happy," she said one last time. "Both of you." As their car disappeared down the road, Mrs. Hyen stood waving until the very end. The breeze caught her tears, but this time, she didn't wipe them away. They were not tears of sorrow, but of peace, because she knew her son had finally found not just love, but a reason to live deeply, gently, and fully. And as the city lights faded behind them, Deep smiled, a true, unguarded smile. It wasn't just the end of illness. It was the beginning of healing, of love, of family, of the simple, sacred right to be happy.